planning to spend a bunch of money in the offseason, and there would be salary cap constraints anyway. I'm just curious.
We're going to spend all the money we have in offseason.
Well, that gets to the question that with new ownership, with the Adelson and Dumont families, what's your sense of their commitment to spending what would be necessary on the player salary front to go where the franchise wants to go?
Yeah, I don't think money's going to be an object. I think it's doing it the right way, bringing in people with good character. The money is not going to be the limiting factor. They want to win. We're going to be smart about it, though. But I don't expect we're not having money conversations.
The Mavericks make a move to move on from Tim Hardaway Jr. Could Klay Thompson or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope be on the way as well? A lot to get into on this episode of Inside the Mavs. Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining us here for this latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel. And follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Joining me live from Slovenia. Well, actually, he's with the Slovenian national team as they get ready for their friendly before they get ready for their qualifying tournament to try to get to the Olympics. GrantAfseth joining me here on the program. Grant, what's going on?
Not much. Definitely a very loud environment in the pregame, but when a trade gets made, you definitely got to talk about it for sure.
For sure. And for folks who don't know, where exactly are you with respect to getting ready for this Slovenian game today?
Yeah, I think, with the trade itself, I think definitely was a relative framework of what we kind of expected, I would say, in like the last, couple weeks or a week or so, where the Mavericks were likely going to try to find a way to reduce their spending obligations. Whether to keep Derrick Jones Jr. by unlocking that non-taxpayer mid-level exception with $12.9 million. It's a huge difference, going from, I believe, $5.3 million with the taxpayer mid-level. That definitely positions you much better to retain a key player coming off a career year. And also opens up the options of, some of the recently reported things as well, too. Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Klay Thompson. Those are some names of the Mavericks. It seems like they're exploring other options as well to make upgrades, whether, not just being content with like, we're just automatically going to prioritize bringing back Derrick Jones, but at least keeping the options open for alternative upgrades. And, whether those are available or not, or feasible, definitely seems like they are pursuing like that exploratory, like kind of just seeing what's out there with the feelers of, what's feasible to get this guy, who has interest, things of that nature. So definitely, a trade that opens up options, and I think is overdue, because Tim Hardaway, I think since the Kyrie trade especially, it's very hard to play him with extended stretches next to Kyrie and Luka. And as he would have entered next season as the third highest paid player, he's kind of been that in the last while as well. And you're not getting third best player impact. I know it's not as simple as that, but that's kind of one of the ways to view it for sure.
Yeah, the Mavericks moving on with 3 second-round picks to Detroit in exchange for Quentin Grimes, a 2025 second via Toronto, and 2 2028 seconds in the deal. So Tim Hardaway Jr., after 5.5 seasons, moving on to Detroit, and coming back is a 24-year-old in Quentin Grimes, a guy who per 36 minutes shoots nearly 8 threes per 36 minutes, has shot over 37% for his career from the three-point line. Had some injuries that he dealt with when he was in Detroit last year after coming over from New York. What kind of player are the Mavericks getting in terms of a Quentin Grimes, who we think can be a guy that can help out on the defensive end as well with his size and his frame.
Yeah, I think he's an impactful. He's got like at least the basics of a 3-and-D talent. Someone that is a motion shooting option. I think that is definitely a layer that you would like to fill the void of when you have someone going out in a trade like Tim Hardaway Jr. I think he's an impactful on-ball defender, definitely a better one by a considerable margin compared to Tim as well. So I think you're getting the basics of what you would want, and I think there are some challenges still with the roster overall, but I like his skill set. The thing that you kind of have to solve for is you still have a lot of 6'5" or shorter players that you have to 5 minutes for, which, I mean, not a bad problem to have. But, if Olivier Maxon's Prosper develops and is vying for minutes, it gets even more complicated because you have to, at the current construction of this roster, you have guys like Dante Exum, Jaden Hardy as ball handling options that can play off the ball as well. You have Josh Green on the roster, and now you have Quentin Grimes. So that's 4 players there, where it seems like whether it's with Jaden Hardy entering his 3rd year, that might be tough for him to be in a position where you want your career to really elevate. In your 3rd year, Dante Exum, he's signed on a cheap deal again, so you can kind of get away with doing what they did last year, where you cycle minutes, whether you're giving him minutes or not. But I think definitely might be a consolidation potential there, where a player in a sign and trade could be a logical option that's a little taller, unless you're really, really committed to giving minutes to
No, for sure. And for Grimes at 6'5", 210 pounds, decent point of attack defender, as we mentioned, can shoot the ball a little bit from 3. It's going to be interesting to see how he continues to get integrated in. It's interesting because some of the comments that we've seen from Mavericks fans feel like Grimes is the kind of player that they thought Josh Green was going to be when he was initially drafted from Arizona. Green has turned into a little bit kind of a different player since coming into the league, more of an energy guy. He does have a little bit of a 3 that he's developing more. But Grimes fits more of the idea, I think, of what the Mavericks want to do from a defensive and an offensive standpoint so that they can be able to handle things with respect to that. So it'd be interesting to see how Grimes will fit in and what his role will be based off of what you mentioned with Dante Exum as well. His $3.15 million will be guaranteed for the Mavericks as well. So he's going to be a part of this roster going forward. Now, what kind of more gymnastics can Nico Harrison and this front office be able to do, given the fact that they've now moved on from Tim Hardaway Jr., and now they've got in a younger player who can potentially fit much better with this roster going forward. More on this when it comes not only to the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade, but also reports Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Klay Thompson, could they also be potential Mavericks as well? The reporting on that. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out with us through our spot and today's video podcast partner in Aura. Kevin Gray here with GrantAfseth as the Mavericks make the move to move on from Tim Hardaway Jr., acquiring Quentin Grimes to send 3 second-round picks over to Detroit to make that move happen. And, of course, it opens up more money for the Mavericks to what Derrick Jones Jr. is for the Mavericks as 1A, 1B priority, according to Nico Harrison, for this team going forward from there. So it'll be interesting to see how they're able to go ahead and move forward with that, but also what that means for the rest of this team. And Grant, we are getting more reporting when it comes to potential other players when it comes to this Mavericks team, which are very interesting. And we'll start with one that is kind of interesting given the fact that the Denver Nuggets, who were, of course, the reigning NBA champions before losing, of course, to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Eastern or the Western Conference semifinals, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has declined his player option and is now an unrestricted free agent. And Mark Stein, longtime NBA insider, of course, writing for Substack now, reports that there could be mutual interest between the Mavericks and KCP, who is a 2-time NBA champion, to try to get something done. Now, that's interesting because I don't know how willing the Nuggets would be to play ball with the Mavericks, given the fact that it would probably take a sign and trade in order to meet the number that KCP is looking for. But what do you think about KCP as a potential fit for the Mavericks and what they could try to do to maybe work something out for him to be a part of this team? Because I would think he would be a perfect fit based on his skill set and what the Mavericks would need from him at that position.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at, like, obviously, like, past the logistics of, like, what load it would take to get the guy and everything, just the skill set, I think he'd be a very good fit. I think, with the Mavericks, since the Kyrie trade, have leaned more into like playing out of handoffs and different actions. I think a movement shooter, someone who's used to playing in the dribble handoff game, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think that could open up some intriguing options, for the offense. Perhaps that could be a potential opportunity for Derek Lively to expand as a dribble handoff big a little bit more as well too. Whether you're playing off the elbows or just some delay sets where, he has the ball at the top of the key and you're just kind of getting into the offense. KCP's potentially like coming off a pin down in the corner or something like that, and Derek Lively's handing off like the zoom action stuff, and he just quickly shoots the ball. That could be an interesting layer because, having shooting threats like that goes a long way, whether they're like dynamic off the dribble players or not, because it makes the opposing team have to really consider working. Like even Sam Hauser in the NBA Finals, you don't think of him as like a massive threat, like obviously not off the dribble, but like you can't hide a defender like Luka Doncic if you're trying to hide Luka Doncic, because he might just, like, the second you don't pay attention, he's going to come off of a handoff or a pin down, and you're kind of in trouble if you're thinking you can fall asleep a little bit or just relax. So that's the type of shooting threat I think that they hoped Tim Hardaway Jr. could be, but I think he was a little too up and down, and I think he's not necessarily, like, he's an effective shooter, but I think he also is a little bit of a rhythm player where he's got to have some opportunities to put the ball on the floor for his confidence. And I don't think that's something you have to worry about necessarily with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I also think he's a impactful on-ball defender. One thing you have to worry about a little bit though is with him being in his 30s. If you're giving him a long-term deal to entice him to come, are you confident that will sustain in the long run? I don't know. That's why Nico Harrison has that job as GM. So a lot of those considerations you have to definitely bring into the mix. But I think on the surface, entering the upcoming season, he would definitely be a helpful player and provide a different skill set, because you at least have players on the bench you can turn to, like Dante Exum, and then depending on maybe Josh Green, that you can give a different skill set. But also depends on who you give up in the sign and trade, because Denver, as you said, they would have to be enticed. I don't know if it's mostly salary filler, but we're at a point with Tim Hardaway being traded that you kind of have to give a rotation player up if you are doing a trade of this nature. So that would definitely adjust a little bit of how you look at it from a rotation standpoint if you are giving up a player like a Josh Green in a trade, which, I mean, honestly, I think Josh Green's developed well over the last recent years, ever since being benched in the the previous conference finals run. But I think overall you would have to consider with him, if you can get an upgrade, risk reward over the next couple years. Do you think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a better player in still 2 or 3 years? If you think that, then I think that makes the most sense, because Kyrie Irving has a limited window as someone also in his 30s as well. Like, for all we know, he could be great at 35, 36, and, you know, we're like kind of like how LeBron's been with, like, being great at 39, 38, whatever, 37, 36, all those years. So we may not have to worry about that as much, but you want to make the most of an all-NBA first-team player like Luka having a running mate like Kyrie Irving. And then hopefully you just don't run into the Boston Celtics again. That's another element. But definitely just one of those things that you have to consider making upgrades when it's possible. But you don't want to get too old, because we have seen the benefit of athleticism with this team. And Josh Green is as athletic as it gets. Same with Derrick Jones Jr. as well.
Yeah, and this is a young team that the Mavericks are putting together based off of their current roster that they have. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope declining what was a $15.4 million player option for next year. And it's interesting because you look at the timeline that he would fit. He would be a win-now type of player that the Mavericks are looking for, given the window that they're open. And if you're watching this and listening to this, the idea I think that folks need to start to take with them going forward is the Mavericks see an opportunity in a window that's open now to be able to try to add some players that can help them win based off of the timeline that they have, because we talk about the future assets that they have. They don't have control of their picks between 2027 and 2030. So you got to be able to maximize your window with the capital that you have. And if it means getting a little bit older player but can help you win right now based on the framework that you have to work in terms of the time, that may be something that you look at, whether you're thinking about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, if you're talking about Jeremy Grant from the Blazers, or as we'll talk about right now, Klay Thompson apparently entering the mix when it comes to this discussion as well. Mark Stein again reporting that the Mavericks could be interested in bringing in Klay Thompson, which for a lot of people thinking, okay, is Klay washed? Is he this? Is he that? But one thing that he still is a devastatingly good three-point shooter, as we saw from this past season, once again, even with his advanced age and a little bit of decline, obviously, in terms of defensive skills. Mark Stein saying that league sources are telling him that the Mavericks, with some newfound financial flexibility after securing the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade, are another team intent on exploring, quote, the feasibility of Thompson signing once he makes it to free agency. Your thoughts on Klay Thompson? Yes, that Klay Thompson being a potential fit with the Dallas Mavericks based off what we're hearing here.
Yeah, I think with Klay Thompson, definitely he's going to have a variety of different shooters. I think we've seen some teams like Magic already being linked to him. But I think when you're in a position that he is in, the top player kind of sets the tone for your position or that general group. And Paul George, his future matters a lot. We don't really see much Orlando conversation with Paul George. It seems like the Philadelphia 76ers, which has some overlap between the two guys, he's not necessarily keen on going there. So, in a way, if the Warriors view Paul George as an option, potentially that pushes Klay out, or depending on however they want to approach the trade scenario, if it's even feasible. But I think if you look at just competition overall in the market, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope becomes the name as well, because he's not as accomplished as Klay Thompson in his career, but a cheaper, potentially more consistent, I guess you could say, in terms of what you get defensively at this point in the career. Maybe that's the player Orlando wants to favor over Klay Thompson if it costs them less money to get. So I think now that we've got net, like kind of like the landscape of what the market may look like to even get them, like in terms of competition. Other teams may develop. I think from a talent standpoint, Klay presents an intriguing option where even when he's at his lowest as a player, he's still one of the best shooters. And I think that's definitely something you always have to entertain. He's not the defender he used to be, but I think if you have him next to a playmaker like Doncic and a Kyrie Irving, there's a lot of creativity you can get with those guys in the half court. Derek Lively's going to get better, but I think another element of it all is you would have to get a little more out of PJ Washington as a little bit more of a feature guy, because if you just do a look at how the Celtics guarded the Mavs, they were staying home on shooters anyways in the corners. So Klay Thompson's not going to get left open. Defenses just don't do that unless they have to fully commit to help and just not think about, oh, I'm leaving Klay Thompson open. So I think the struggle that you would have there is you would still need a third player outside of Klay Thompson, in addition to Luka and Kyrie, to step up and kind of, fill in the void of that needed scoring boost throughout the course of a high-stakes playoff game, which he had shown capability of doing at times against the Oklahoma City Thunder. There was a lot of open shooting when the defense was pre-rotating and really sending a low man early, but there were times where he was featured in the post against a mismatch, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think you would need to explore ways to build a little more out of PJ's game offensively, and I think that would take some offseason development, because he has flashes, but I don't think he's shown quite yet either the comfort level in the offense or just like maybe a need to develop a little bit more in certain areas. Like, we don't really know the psychology, of course, so it's like, that's just up to interpretation. But I think that's probably something you would need if you do acquire Klay. But then also, I'm assuming, your 1 through 3 is Kyrie, Luka, Klay. That means you're losing your point of attack defender that guarded the top player on a nightly basis, I think arguably more than anybody else in the NBA based off tracking metrics, if not just as much as anybody else. So that's something where you have to ask yourself, does Klay pick up the toughest perimeter player? Does PJ Washington? And then that gets into a little bit of a complicated scenario, because that would make him have to really work defensively, when I think Golden State has actually had other players take that responsibility and actually allowed him to pick a spot. So then that gets to a risk-reward scenario where you're like, are we diminishing a little bit of his offense because we're asking more from him as a point of attack defender? So I think that's those considerations you have to take with fit, where it goes a little bit more beyond just a great shooter playing with Luka. That sounds fantastic. Because there are a little bit of other things that go into it as well too.
Yeah, I think the idea is how much more shooting can you find, and how much more, if you're going to go down that route, how do you complement or be able to hide at times Klay in terms of defensively? Because you might, if it's either PJ or Derrick Jones Jr., one of them is going to have to take the defensive assignment primarily, and how you shake up your lineup to be able to get that to fit while still trying to get what you can from Klay offensively will be a tough needle to try and thread for this team, given what they were able to do defensively last year and how well that they were able to make their identity on that side of the floor. But it's interesting, the idea that we're talking about a Klay Thompson, a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a Jeremy Grant to a lesser degree, who you would have to do, obviously, a trade with Portland in order to make that happen. But these are now the conversations that the Mavericks have put themselves in by making a run to the NBA Finals. So, as I said on a previous episode, get used to these conversations, because the Mavericks have now opened up that championship window where they're going to be in play for these kinds of players. The question will be how creative and how aggressive will Nico Harris and his front office continue to be, which, Grant, we've seen so far they are willing to be aggressive to be able to try to make these moves. Maybe these are other ones, maybe a little bit less feasible, but at the same time, with some gymnastics, if you will, could potentially make that happen as we get ready to close today. Go ahead. So we'll see how that goes in terms of what the Mavericks decide to do there as far as the rest of their free agency goes, and what they decide to do and what the rest of their trades, and what they do in terms of the rest of the moves going forward. So, look, it's going to be a fantastic time. It's going to be a great time to see. Obviously, Grant is covering the Slovenian national team as they get ready to have their friendly on this Friday before they get ready for their Olympic qualifying tournament. So, look, we'll see how the rest of it goes. Grant, can you tell the folks where you're at and what they can expect from your coverage going forward for the rest of the time that you're there?
Oh, yeah. Right now, we're at the Slovenia-Brazil friendly game before the Greece Olympic qualifier. This is the first game that Luka Doncic is going to be participating in since traveling to Slovenia. And yesterday, I was at his practice, first 5-on-5 practice that he had with the national team. And, there's only one team that's going to earn an Olympic bid in that Greece qualifier. There's a couple of really tough teams in there, Greece, in their host country, with Giannis Antetokounmpo. His brother's injured, so The only, I think, established NBA talent is Giannis. But as I've learned talking with people from here, they've told me there's some home court advantages that you get when you're in your home country. That as someone I'm used to NBA, I'm not necessarily familiar with. There's some stories I heard where some people or teams have had situations where the bus driver turns the heat up and on the way or from the airport onto the hotel and on the way to the arena, and it makes the players a little tired and all that stuff, and they make them wait at the ramp. We can't get in right now. We're going to have to wait a little bit. So it's a little easier. I'm not saying accusing anyone of anything, obviously, but some people feel at times in these games in their own country, the referees forget how the whistle works a little bit for their own country. So we might not see too much Giannis Antetokounmpo foul trouble. It's something that I was kind of told about. It definitely will be an interesting experience. I think Greece is also one of the most elite basketball environments. There's a lot of passion from the fan base, and seeing their own country in person will be fantastic. Giannis being involved will be fantastic. And, even some of those teams over there, there's fans that are shooting flares, have flags in the crowd. So there's definitely going to be a lot of passion. And I think it's been a little while since their basketball team has, men's basketball has been in the Olympics. So I think there's going to be a lot of motivation to really get this done. So, potentially, if they make it through on both sides, with Luka and Group A and Giannis in Group B, we could be seeing elite superstars battling with only one of them making it to the Olympics, and one of them is defending the home court in their own country. So it could be one of those rare, I guess you could say, historical basketball moments for people that really love the game that you don't really see that often with how a lot of other teams are pretty loaded. I'm not naming names like USA or anything, but usually some teams don't have to worry about this type of stuff for sure.
Well, that's going to be awesome to see your coverage there, and looking forward to watch you bringing that coverage when it comes to Team Slovenia. Of course, another Mavericks tie, Sean Sweeney, the lead assistant for the Mavericks, is a part of the Slovenian coaching staff as well. So it's going to be fun to see him and Luka working together for that team. Grant, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We're going to let you go so you can get ready to cover the game today. But appreciate you hopping on with us, making this work, and looking forward to seeing your coverage there with the Slovenian national team, man. Appreciate your time. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thanks to GrantAfseth joining me with the Slovenian national team as they get ready for their game against Brazil and they continue their tournament next week as well. You can find him on Twitter at GrantAfseth. Make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. It's got tremendous coverage and breakdowns of everything when it comes to not just the NBA, but obviously for the international game as well. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Make sure you like and comment on the video as well. Appreciate you bearing with us as he, of course, was in the atmosphere itself. So we appreciate you watching and listening to us throughout the podcast as well. Let us know how you loved the episode, and we'll go from there. But again, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. It's the Inside the Mavs podcast, wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating, write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe as well. For Grant, I'm Kevin. This has been Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura.